Since this is an exit interview, so my first question is, why did you apply for another job?
Well, yeah, that's it.
No, I know, but you got assigned.
I did.
But anyways, before we go to that one, let me backtrack on, the last 5 years has been fast.
Yes.
But it's been really fast because of the COVID.
Yep.
So how do you think we fare in the pandemic?
I was very proud of these parishes. I mean, so we, through every step, every stage, we followed, what the CDC, the governor, and the archdiocese were telling us. And it worked. I mean, at the baseline, at first it was hard because everyone wanted to come to church, and it was right before Easter and Holy Week a year ago. And we had to tell people to stay home, and it was weird celebrating Mass here, where it was just me and Primo and Jared, our camera crew, and to give a homily in an empty church, it was just odd. But people rallied. I mean, they watched the online videos, and there was, and not only that, but I there was one homily I gave where I spoke about creating an altar in your home and lighting candles and placing, and the gestures through the Mass, and people responded. I mean, and they felt more connected that way, and so our parishes stayed very united during that time. And then when that really came into play is when we could start coming back, and people were very courageous, coming back and following the guidelines, wearing their masks, socially distancing, cleaning the pews. Oh yeah, because we had all that stuff, the cleaning supplies. And I will say, and I think it's safe to say at this point, as far as we can tell, now obviously there are things that are we can't track, we can't know everything, but as far as we can tell, nobody caught COVID at church. Yeah. Right, we had parishioners that got sick with COVID. We had parishioners that struggled through that, but they would always get it from some other source. As far as we could track, nobody got it at church, and that was true for here and St. Patrick's and at the school. That we had cases, but nobody got it while attending liturgy, and to me, that's a huge sign of success. When you're talking about trying to have these policies and keeping people safe, and we're still in the midst of it, right? I mean, we're not back to 100% yet. We still can't receive, the precious blood from the chalice. I mean, there's still some restrictions that we're holding to for safety's sake. And but I've just been very, very proud of these parishes that have really stepped up and tried to do their best to make it through. So.
And yeah, aside from that, we also had some outreach programs that we did even with the pandemic.
Oh yeah, we had our mask ministry right at the beginning. We had quite a few parishioners that were making masks before they were widely available in any other way. So even for the local law enforcement, they would rely on some of the masks that we were making, for them, and obviously for our parishioners. We also had outreach to our local, schools and things during Christmas in the midst of the pandemic. That we were getting pajamas and blankets and things like that for some of our. So we didn't let COVID stand in the way of that. And we just had so many people that stepped up and were like, we are willing to help out in any way we can during a pandemic.
I think we did babysitting too, right?
We did some babysitting for essential workers. There was a local church that was willing to house that daycare during the day. And we had volunteers that went out and helped with that. Yep. So it was amazing.
And we fed a lot of people too.
We did. We kept the brown bag program going during COVID. Now, it got a little hairy there because there was a time when the Salvation Army wasn't as big on taking food donations, just because the need for the volunteers and everything else, it was going to spread, or there was a fear of spreading the contagion. So, but we still collected food, and we still tried to help those in need when they came to us. So.
How about you being quarantined twice?
Twice. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was. And the crazy thing is, I think rumors actually spread that I actually had it.
Really?
Yeah, so there were rumor mills that I got it, and I never did. I mean, this whole time, I never did. Now I'm vaccinated, so I think I'm in the clear. But the first time, it was right after Halloween. Our staff got hit with it, and we had a few members that tested positive. But everyone did fine. No one, got seriously sick. But I had a quarantine, because I was amongst the staff, so I was exposed, and so that was 2 weeks, right in November that I had to stay at home. But But thank God for technology, right? Like, because we were still able to have our online meetings, and I was still able to engage in people via phone calls and Zoom meetings. The second time, it was Christmas. Yeah, yeah. And so it was right before Christmas that I got the news that someone I was around was positive for COVID. And I even called my, we have what's called clergy care nurses, and they take care of the clergy in the archdiocese. And I called my rep up, and I was just like, here's the situation, you know, here's what happened. Can I please celebrate Christmas Mass? Yeah. And my clergy care nurse, God bless her, she was just like, Father, from what I'm hearing, I am 99% sure you are not going to get COVID, but you have to quarantine. And she was just like, according to the policy, you have to quarantine. So I did, you know, for that week. And the people were so generous. I had so many people call, and they're like, we want to bring you food during this time. And, you know, people were bringing gifts by the back door, you know, and just like very, very generous. And so I made sure to watch the 4 o'clock Mass here on Christmas Eve.
We greeted you in the video.
You did. You all turned around and you greeted the camera, and I like waved to you even though you couldn't see it. And so then I stepped outside in my backyard over here, and as people were leaving, I was trying to wish them a Merry Christmas, and it was just so nice. But yeah, and what made that infinitely worse, now that was my last Christmas here, you know, and it's like, so yeah, I missed out on that, but it was still amazing, the outpouring of people supporting and wanting to be a part of it, and like just the unity of the parish during that time was incredible.
So how does it feel to be the new YouTube personality, to be a new...
Well, I'm not. So that...
Yes, you are. You got 18,000 views for...
Well, for Good Friday, yeah. Yeah, the YouTube algorithm was very kind to us. No, I will say it's been very humbling, because we've actually... that one video kind of launched us onto a lot of people's radar. And so since then, since Good Friday of last year, so 2 Good Fridays ago, I've had people that have emailed and even wrote snail mail letters from New Mexico, California, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, a lot of people in New England, and even people from England and Africa who have reached out and have watched our videos. And I know even in the Philippines, we've had, you know, people that have watched the live stream. And so it's just weird, this international fame. Presence that the parishes have had, right? So it is really neat. And I still remember, I think it was the Good Friday video, we had someone write in on the chat, and they were just like, what parish is this? You know, like they were just like really fascinated by St. Margaret Mary's and St. Patrick's. And so, yeah, no, and kudos to Primo and Jared, you know, who really kind of ran that program, and it really has been a benefit to our people, but then people on a grander scale. Yeah.
And I think that's the good thing about, I mean, not good thing about the pandemic, but the church has equipped itself for the future because we have tapped in technology to evangelize.
We had to modernize very quickly, and so we updated the website, we used YouTube and social media, like we really made ourselves a presence I mean, we were even sending out worship aids via email so that people could sing at home, you know, as they were watching us. And so it was, the whole thing was just incredible. And even like, you know, these last few months, we had to do that appeal for St. Margaret Mary's to kind of catch up with our collections. Like we were a little behind. And we were getting checks from New Mexico and Arizona. Yeah, we had people contributing, because they were like, we've been watching all year, and we feel like we're a part of the parish, and we want to financially help. And so it's just, the whole thing's just been, you know, very much a God
I think
thing.
we're blessed because, you know, even if we're a small parish, like we have the talent of Dr. Primo, and, you know, because like some of the parishes don't have, like, so I have a friend in Florida. They watch and says, oh, we saw you, and then they also, like, because people are trickling in to go to Mass, to attend Mass, and said, oh, there's 30 people right now. So they've been counting how many people are coming in, and until it gets, you know, we have a big crowd.
Yeah, exactly. And even for like our daily Masses, I mean, you know, before the pandemic, like we would have, you know, 10 or 15 people come to daily Mass between St. Pat's and St. Margaret Mary's. Like it was pretty consistent. During pandemic and now even afterwards, I mean, we're seeing views of 50 plus, you know, watching online, plus the people that we have coming to Mass physically. And so it's like, you know, here we are, like people are attending. Now the hope, of course, is that after pandemic, people physically come back, right? Like, I mean, it'd be great to have 50 people coming to Mass and receiving the Blessed Sacrament, right? I mean, that's the real goal. But even then, like, we have so many people that are in nursing homes and are stuck at home, that this is a great way for them to be a part of it. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one homily that you inserted a YouTube video of what happens during Mass. It said, "Oh, our parish has come a long way." That was a really, remember that?
Yeah, I do. And
That was,
yeah.
You know, the angels are coming.
That's
and
right.
It was really good.
And
I think,
I sprung it on these guys. Like, I didn't really give them much prep warning, but I was just like, is there any way we can put this in here? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And they did. And it
was really good.
Yeah.
You know, especially for kids, because that would give them a visual of, oh, this could happen in Mass.
That's right.
You know?
And it's true. I mean, that's what we believe, right? Like, that what we do at Mass, it's not a reflection of heaven, it is heaven. You know, and so, like, to think about, like, the fact that this place is filled with the angels and the saints of the heavenly homeland, and yeah, exactly, and to see that video, yeah, it just made it real.
Oh yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
How do you rate yourself as the pastor of the parish, from 1 to 10?
Oh, that's a tough question. I mean, and you're kind of tapping into what my final homily is going to be, because I recognize, like, looking back over the last 5 years, I mean, there are some things that I wish I would have done differently, you know, and there are things that I feel like I owe people an apology for. There are times that I was not very good about, like, responding to emails and text messages and phone calls, and, you know, just, you get caught up in the busyness, and I wasn't always there for people, and so, you know, there are a lot of things that I wish I would have done better. But especially talking with my brother priest and with the staff, like, I also recognize, like, how God has been so good to me and to these parishes during these 5 years. I mean, it's clear that the Holy Spirit has been very active, you know, during this time, and so many people have come to the faith. They've come back to the church, or they've had conversion experiences, and even people that they were already strong Catholics and they were coming to Mass regularly. They have told me time and again how much they have deepened their faith, you know, during this time, through the homilies, through conversations, through the ministries that our parishes have provided. So I don't know, like, and I don't know, and I'm also very critical of myself. Like, I'm a perfectionist, and so, like, it's hard for me to rate myself on a scale of 1 to 10. So I don't know. I'd probably give myself maybe a 7, you know, and I know people are going to say that, you know, like, I know that would be their response, but, like,
Give yourself a 9. So they have 1% room for improvement.
But I am very critical, and I really am, like, a perfectionist, and so, like, I look at things and I'm kind of like, yeah, I could have done better, you know, I could. And I think the thing I go back to time and again is that this was my first time being a pastor, and so it was very much a learning experience. And so I am very grateful to these parishes being, you know, patient with me and helping me in that way, that I learned a lot during these last 5 years. And my hope, of course, is that I take some of that with me to the seminary, you know, to teach these future priests.
Okay, the next one is, how do you rate the staff, from 1 to 10?
The staff, I would give a 10 out of 10. And the reason being, I mean, it is very, very hard, you know, to be a staff of very alive and active parishes in a county that is one of the poorest counties in the state of Indiana. You know, and so, I mean, you're trying to do a lot with a little, right? Like, and you're trying to meet the maximum amount of need with the minimum number of resources. And so, I mean, there were times it was challenging. I mean, we had staff members that, you know, they would step on each other's toes, and there'd be conflict, and all that's normal. Like, all that is normal to parish life. But why I would ultimately give the staff a 10 out of 10 is very clear, that every single one of our staff members at St. Margaret Mary's, at St. Patrick's, and at the school were extremely passionate, you know, for their, for their area, like what they were committed to, and that has a value that goes beyond anything else, you know. And so, like, one of my, I recognize that one of my biggest jobs as a pastor was to back my staff 100% because of the good work they were doing. And so I had the honor and the privilege to do that time and again, you know, is to stand behind my staff and to really support them in the ministries that they were doing. And I don't know. There's all these books and all this literature out there about like what it means to be an active and lively parish. You know, a vibrant. That's the key word, vibrant parish. And every time I read those books, like I keep going back to our staff and what they're doing, and it's clear that we have a very vibrant and active parish. You know, so I mean, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be conflict. But at the end of the day, like that was something that I think compelled us forward, and we met the needs that were there. Yeah.
How about the congregation? How would you rate the congregation?
Same thing. I mean, you've got a congregation that is very alive and active, and so they get it. You know, they get the mission of the parish. Now, I will say, like, I think here at St. Margaret Mary's, you know, the biggest challenge that we face is the generations of believers. And what I mean by that is, you know, we have a lot of our parishioners that have stepped up over the years to take on things, and they're looking for who's going to take their place. You know, like who's going to be the next generation to run the garage sale, the reverse raffle, the noodle making, you know, for the craft fair. Like, I mean, these are things that have been going on for years, and it's I think that's where we're at. Is it's like who's going to step up, and it may be that some of these things, you know, fall to the wayside. You know, like right now, like the noodle making, it may not happen moving forward. You know, some of the key people that were involved with that have either gotten too old to do it or have passed on, and that's okay. And so the question then is, like, is the next generation of believers going to do something different? You know, and that's fine. But the question is, you know, what is that going to look like? And so I would say, like, here at St. Margaret Mary's, you know, a lot of our parishioners, their kids and grandkids have moved away. You know, they're no longer really a part of the parish. Now, we do have some, but that's the biggest thing, is that a lot of times when you have these ministries, right, it's your kids or grandkids who have been a part of it that they take it over. And that's not the case. And so
that's one thing we have to pray.
That's right. And so that may be the biggest challenge that St. Margaret Mary's faces moving forward is what does that next generation look like in taking over, you know, a lot of these things. Yeah.
Now, coming from the seminary and, you know, being ordained as a priest, what are your realizations and lessons that you have realized as a pastor of this parish? You know, what are the things that, like, oh, this is what we studied, this is what it is, and the real?
Yeah, I don't know, like, so much of it, like, I mean, so we were in seminary, right? So much of it's academic, you know, I mean, you're learning philosophy, theology, you know, all the teachings of the church and the doctrines and the teachings, and that's part of it, right? I mean, that's a big part of it. When people come to you with questions, like, it's a very easy thing to just point to what the church teaches, right? And just say, this is what we believe, you know, this is what it is. And so I would say the biggest thing that you learn in parish life is that the rubber hits the road someplace, and that there are really these two. And this is the church in general, right? There is the divine aspect of the church, right? God is in charge, right? The Holy Spirit is definitely in charge. Like we believe in providence. We believe that God's going to see us through. Like, and so there's a divine ideal, and the parish aims for that. And then you've got the human reality, right? And so you just begin to realize, I mean, parish life, it's messy. You know, like, not everything's perfect, you know, like, I mean, and even family dynamics, what people are going through in their daily life, and then you translate that to how ministries function, you know, and catechesis and where our kids are at, you know, and what they're dealing with, and then you got the society at large and the culture, and so you begin to realize, like, these two things are in constant tension. You know, you've got the human element, and then you've got the divine goal and the divine inspiration, and so you're constantly playing this balancing act, and it's not a bad thing. And that's what you come to realize, like, this is all normal, and not only is it normal, but it's humanity, right? I mean, this is every human being's life, that they have the messiness of their life, the sins of their life, and yet they're striving for the ideal. You know, I mean, you know, Christ teaches us, you know, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, right? And that's true at the parish level too. We want to be perfect as heaven is perfect, and then you realize that it's probably never going to be, but that doesn't diminish the fact that we try, right? You try again and again and again, and yes, there are going to be things that come up, and there's going to be mess, and there's going to be conflict, and there's going to be all this other stuff, but that's fine. at the end of the day, because the mission remains. We had our priest convocation this last week, and all the priests of the Archdiocese got together at St. Meinrad, and one of the big things that we talked about, it's the fact that in spite of all the craziness in the world that we live in, and so many people in the church right now, they feel hopeless. I mean, that they look to the future and they're just kind of like, where are we going? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
But you begin to realize as a priest and talking with my brother priests, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
It's all worth it. And so I don't know, I'm filled with a deep sense of hope and a deep sense of purpose for our parishioners and for our people. So yeah, it's good stuff.
By the way, when did you find out? I mean, when did you talk to the Archbishop, and when did you find out that you were going to be reassigned? And how long did it take before you tell the congregation?
It was a shock. It was a complete shock. So every year, the Archdiocese sends us a letter, and in it basically gives us the option. It says, where are you at right now? Do you want to remain at your parish? Do you want to leave your parish, or are you completely neutral? You just don't care. You could stay, you could go, it doesn't matter. And every year that I've been a priest, including when I was at St. Christopher's, I've always marked, I want to stay. Because there's always more to do. There's always the next thing. There's always this connection. And so being here, I always check that I want to stay. And this year in particular, I thought I had 2 more years. Because I was an administrator my first year at these parishes, which means that I wasn't the pastor and my term hadn't started yet. And then I was made a pastor after my first year, so I only had 4 years being a pastor. I've been here 5 years total, 4 years as a pastor. So I thought I had 2 more years of my first term, it was a 6-year term. On top of that, I was just made the dean last year, and that's a 3-year term. So I was like, I got 1 year down for that, which means I've got 2 more years on my dean, 2 more years being a pastor. So in my mind, I wasn't even on the docket. I wasn't even on the radar for a move. So it was at the end of February that I get a call from the Archdiocese, and they were like, we want you to be in this position at the seminary. We want you to be in charge of internal formation, which definitely meant that I was going to be spiritual director to the seminarians as far as running the retreats and the conferences and just doing a lot for their formation. And in my mind, when they asked me that, I genuinely thought like that was going to be on top of what I was already doing. Because I was like, things are going well here, like we've got rhythm, we're getting out of COVID, like all these things were happening, and that was how far away my mind was from being moved. That it wasn't even comprehensible. So when I said that, I was like, is this something I'm just going to do on Fridays? Like I would just drive to Indy. They were like, no, like this would be your full-time job. Like you would have to leave the parishes. And there was that moment of silence because I didn't know what to say. I mean, I was literally speechless. I didn't know what to say. And finally, after a few moments of that, I basically just said, I need time to think about this. And that is something like, I don't know if our parishioners recognize, but I mean, they asked me, it wasn't a dictate, they weren't saying you have to go, right? Because they don't want a priest that is being forced out of their parish and is bitter and angry about being reassigned to go to a seminarians bitter and angry, to train them. Like that wouldn't be good, right? They want the priest to go willingly. So I told him, give me some time, and so for the next 3 days, I prayed about it, I thought about it, and the worst was I couldn't talk to anybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they made it very clear, like this was
told anybody. I mean,
during that time. Yeah, I couldn't tell my family. I couldn't tell anybody. So I'm just sitting on it, trying to piece out, what this was going to mean. So I called them back, and I was like, I really just need to know who was going to be taking my place. Like to me that was a deciding factor. And they basically said, we cannot tell you. Like they were like, you have to trust us. That we're going to pick the right person to fill that. And when I realized that was going to be it, I had prayed about it and I was at peace with the idea that I wanted to do this. That this was not every priest gets asked by their bishop to train future seminarians. Like that is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so as I prayed about it and thought about it, and the fact that my bishop was asking me to do that, I was like, this is where God wants me to be. And it was tough. It was so tough to come to that decision, because I realized what I was giving up in that process. And since then, I have tried very hard not to think about it, because I every time I get teary-eyed thinking about leaving these places and the friends that I've made and those connections. But I just saw the bigger picture, and so very much not knowing what was going to happen, I said, okay, let's do this. And it wasn't until after the fact that they called me back and they could finally tell me, who was taking my place. And that was such a relief, to know that it was Father Ben, because he and I go way back. And he's going to do very, very well here. And so I'm straying away from your question, but basically I got the phone call at the end of February, and then I was told I couldn't tell the parish until the beginning of May. So it was basically the rest of March and April that I had to sit on it.
That's a long time.
And it was so hard because, so many people, I would talk to them and they were asking about future dates and things that were going to happen in the fall and all these questions. And I had to do my best to play the part, that I was going to be here, knowing full well that I wasn't. So it was a mixed feeling of relief and deep sorrow when I made the announcement at the beginning of May. Relief in the sense that I could finally talk openly about it, but it was the first time I publicly recognize what was happening, and so it was very sad to make that announcement and to talk to people about it. So
But at least it's open and it's there.
Yeah.
It's sad still.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned in your homily that you've been talking to Father Ben.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing you said to him now that you know that, knowing that he was going to be your
So when
pastor?
When we first called each other, and it was funny because Father Ben and I, we are best friends. And so for 5 years, we would go on vacation together, we would hang out together a lot. And I would talk about these parishes because it's like a dad talking about his kids, it's what priests talk about, they dads talk about their families, priests talk about their parishes, and he would always talk about his parish, down in Lawrenceburg and Aurora, and then before that it was French Lick and Paoli, and so we just knew each other's assignments very, very well, and so. He was ready. From day one, he just knew. He knew what these parishes were like. He's heard me talk about them a gazillion times. And so that first phone call, he had a gazillion questions because he knew enough to be dangerous in the sense he knew some of the stuff, but he wanted to dive deeper. And so immediately he had all these questions about what kind of outreach do we do? How do we celebrate the liturgies? How do we all the nuts and bolts? And so he scheduled a time to come out here. He visited the parish, parishes, both parishes and the school, and so he has been very much a part of the process every step of the way, wanting to know as much as he could, so that when he gets here, there's not as much of a learning curve. That he can hit the ground running. And especially after a COVID year, he realizes how important it is to have stability, and really to hit the ground in such a way that people know that he knows what he's talking about, that he knows these parishes. So yes, so we've talked pretty much every day since the announcement has been made, and before, because we knew before the announcement was made what was happening, so we could talk about it.
So what advice did you give him?
Not much, quite honestly, because he's in a different boat than I was in when I came here. So when I first came, I was 28 years old and I'd never been a pastor before. So I was very much in the mindset of I'm coming to this as a learning experience, right? I'm learning what it means to be a pastor at the same time that I'm being a pastor. Father Ben is not in that boat, So I mean,
He has experience.
Yes,
Yep.
I mean, he was at French Lick and Paoli for 2 years, and he was at Lawrenceburg and Aurora for 3 years. And so he has 5 years of pastoral experience, just as I do right now. And so he, in some ways, is more capable, or not capable. Well, yeah, he's more capable and more experienced than I am in this, because he's already made a move, right? He's already done this, where he has transitioned from one parish to the next, and has had to come into that and adapt to it. So to him, like this is, he knows what he's doing, right? Like he knows what a transition looks like. He knows what it means to move into a new place. So the only advice that I could give him is literally just answering his questions about what these parishes look like and how they function. I mean, nothing beyond that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned about your different hats your different roles that you have being a dean. Are you assuming that responsibility even if you move to Brute, or?
So Father Ben will get my entire assignment. And it's actually kind of funny, on the Archdiocesan website and in the Criterion newspaper, it goes through and it lists all the new assignments. And for most guys, it's a very quick thing. They're just like, has been this so-and-so, Father so-and-so has been reassigned for, the same assignment for the next 6 years. And so like they go through the list. And some people are like, they're being moved from this parish to that parish. Well, for Father Ben and I, it was much longer, because for me, it was saying Father Daniel Bedel, who was the dean of the Terre Haute Deanery, was the associate vocation director for Terre Haute and the West Deanery of Indianapolis, was the priest moderator for Sacred Heart and St. Mary of the Woods Village, and the pastor at St. Margaret Mary and St. Patrick's Parish and School in Terre Haute. So all those responsibilities. So it said all those, and then is being moved to Brute Seminary as the spiritual director. And then Father Ben had his current assignment listed, and then it said is going to be the dean of the Terre Haute Deanery, the associate vocation director for Terre Haute and the West Deanery, the priest moderator for Sacred Heart and St. Mary of the Woods Village, and the pastor of St. Margaret Mary's and St. Patrick's and the school. So he is assuming everything. Everything that I do. So he, and so that's been part of our conversation too, is about what does it mean to be the dean? What does it mean to be the associate vocation director? Like all the things. The difference is I took a lot of those things on gradually through the years, where they would add things as I went. For him, he's getting it all in one fell swoop. So it is going to be a little bit much, but I think he's going to be perfectly fine at adapting to that. So,
now, what will you miss most about the parish and the school?
Filipino food. Which we got the party tomorrow night.
The party's tomorrow, so you'll get a lot of Filipino food tomorrow.
Yes. So that is definitely up there. But the thing I'm going to miss the most, I would say, a lot of things are going to transfer very well, right? So like I love celebrating the Mass. I'm obviously still going to be celebrating the Mass, for the seminarians. I love teaching, and I'm going to be teaching, the seminarians. I love meeting with people one-on-one and talking about what's going on in their life. I'm going to be doing that in the seminary. But I would say the biggest thing that I'm going to miss is really getting to know our children. And what I mean by that is, and not only at the school, but even in religious ed. I mean, you're one of our catechists, and being able to interact with those kids and answer their questions and just having some of those conversations with them, because you begin to realize, there's an old phrase, he who rocks the cradle rules the world, right? And it's the idea that our kids are the future, and we live in a society and a culture today that is very anti-religious, very anti-Catholic. And so I have thought very long and hard about being a pastor where my energy should be, where my presence should be, the time commitment I have. And the kids, it should be top priority, I mean, because if you can plant a seed there, if you can somehow, and you don't have to convince them of everything, you don't have to beat them over the head and say, you gotta get everything in, everything the Catholic Church teaches. But if you could just plant a seed and just say, this is important, not just for the church, but for you, that for you as an individual, like this thing that your parents and grandparents have handed on to you, it is supreme importance for your life in being a complete and whole person, you know, and because you were created, you weren't just a freak accident of nature, you know, you were created by a God who knows you and loves you intimately, and you are meant for something, you know, like those are the biggest things that anybody could ever know. And so like, that's the part I'm going to miss the most, because by the time our seminarians get to seminary, right? I mean, they're not kids anymore. You know, they're adults. They're you know, in college. They're over 18, and they've made this choice to join seminary.
I realize that already.
Yeah. So I mean, at some level, they get it. So I'm trying to take them to the next level, you know, with that. But just to have that basic connection with a child, I'm going to miss that. Like that, and the questions they would ask. I mean, the mind of a child is fascinating, because they just see things that adults don't see. Like they think differently, and sometimes it's so simple, but it's so profound. So I don't know. That's probably the part I'm going to miss the most. Yeah.
And you do good. I mean, you really do an amazing job with the school kids, because you can see their engagement when you go around and ask them questions.
It's a blast.
Yeah.
And it helps that I'm a kid at heart. I love the same things that they love, the video games, the cartoons, like everything. Like I love it. So we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
Now, so in this journey, what is your biggest take as a priest that you could, you know, share with the seminarians? What do you think would be like, oh, this is what I realized, and, you know?
I think the main theme that I'm going to carry with me is one of the lines that Pope Francis has. So Pope Francis, you know, has been very, very big on instructing his priests, you know, and really trying to engage them and teaching them how to minister in a modern world. And I would say the biggest thing that he has taught, and one of the lines that he uses, is that the shepherd should smell like his sheep. You know, the idea that the shepherd, the pastor, the priest is not aloof from his parishioners. He's not separated from them. You know, he's not in this other realm, you know, from his parishioners, which I think is always a danger when you become a priest, that you see yourself as different. And you are. I mean, you are. I mean, you know, the priest does things that the parishioners cannot. I mean, the priest, you know, confects the Eucharist. The priest forgives sins. I mean, the priest anoints the sick. I mean, there are things a priest does that are different. But at the end of the day, like, what counts is that a priest should be able to step into a situation or a relationship and be able to connect. And that the parishioner feels like, this priest knows me, right? He gets me. He knows what it's like, you know, to be in a family. He knows what it's like to journey through this messy thing we call life. And at some level, that means, you know, having a wide range of interests, you know, that you can talk to people about sports and movies and video games and, you know, all these various activities, music and everything that people love to do, and to be able to connect with them on that level. But deeper than that, because all that stuff is kind of superficial, right? Like all that stuff on the surface. Deeper than that is this idea that when people talk to you, they feel like they've been listened to, and that you understand them and you understand where they're coming from. And we call that pastoring. We call that being a pastor. You know the rules of the church, you know what the church teaches, and you abide by that every time. You don't break any of that. But at the same time, you recognize where people are coming from. And this is what Christ did, right? He went out to the margins. He met people where they were and then brought them in. And so to do that, you have to smell like the sheep. You have to be a child of God, as we all are. You have to think in that mindset. And so I think that's the biggest thing I want to focus on with our seminarians. Is obviously my job is going to be spiritual formation. It's going to be teaching them how to pray. It's teaching them how to discern. But a big part of that's going to be how do you connect with other people who also want to learn how to pray and are also discerning things in their life. You know, it's not just about you as a seminarian and a priest figuring this out for yourself, but then taking that to other people.
Now, for the last 4 weeks or 4 or 5 weeks, we've been you've been singing songs.
So sorry.
No, it's good. It's really good. It's good. Everybody's enjoyed that. I mean, and it's good because you said that the last interview that you want to ruin a pop song and,
That's right.
so make people relate it to God,
That's right.
which is good, which is really true. I mean, the Elvis Presley song was really good. I Can't Help Falling in Love. And then,
It's a good one.
Yep. So now, this video, we're going to show this one actually after your last Mass. So we're not going to preempt your farewell song to the parish because I know you have.
I do.
But can you sing us that song then? What is your farewell song?
I mean, okay, so you promised it's going to be air after the homily.
Right, Doc? We were going to air this like after.
After July 7th.
Okay.
July.
Yeah, because I know I've got the farewell thing coming up this weekend, and then 4th of July will be, and that's when I'll do it, is that July 3rd, July 4th.
Finished Friday.
Yeah, but then you guys are sworn to secrecy,
Oh, well, yeah.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. Because we're talking like 10 days, so you just got to keep it secret for 10 days.
We will, Father. We will.
So I'm pretty sure this is the case. I could be wrong, but I think the first homily that I sang at these parishes, it was the story about my brother getting married, and that was what the reading was. It was about a great wedding feast, right? And the father-daughter dance. So my sister-in-law Claire, with her dad, the song that they decided to play, and I sang because I think it applies to God's love for us, was "You Are My Sunshine." And so I think that, I'm pretty sure, I think that's right. I think that was my first sung homily, yeah. And so I think it relates to what I would want to express to our parishioners. And I'm going to cry if I sing it.
I have a.
You have tissues?
Yeah.
But I mean, it fits. It fits because I mean, it's the whole. And it would be really just the refrain, that. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. And so, yeah, that's what I want to end on. So. Yeah.
Now, so this is the last one. So what is your message? What's your last message as a pastor for these 2 parishes?
My last message.
As a pastor.
Right. I mean, I think the biggest thing I wanted to emphasize in these last 5 years, and in these last few homilies, I think I've tried to hit this too, is I think the biggest fear of a pastor is that people remember them more than their message, right? So I don't want people to linger on me being the pastor here, because that's not the point, right? Like, and if people enjoyed my homilies, great. Like, I mean, that's awesome. But I really, really want people to fall in love with Christ. And the reason we come to Mass, it's not to hear a homily. That's icing on the cake. I mean, that's great. I mean, it's awesome if people want to come and hear a good homily. And they should. I mean, they have the right to. They have a right to have a good, encouraging message to get them through the week. But the reason we come to Mass, the reason that we're Catholic, the reason that all this is important is because we have been gifted with Christ at Mass, that He gives Himself to us in His body and blood. And so I would just emphasize again and again, because it's been transformative in my life, this relationship with Christ, and what a gift it is that He gave us Himself. So I would say to our people, like, please keep going to Mass, do everything in your power to be able to receive the Blessed Sacrament. And more than that, spend time with the Blessed Sacrament. If that means coming in here during the week when the church is unlocked and you can come in here, or heading over to St. Patrick's where the Adoration Chapel is. It's just different. I mean, yes, praying at home matters. It works. Like, you can pray anywhere. Jesus is everywhere. I totally get that. But He gave us this gift for a reason. you know, like he wanted us to spend time with him. And it's just different. It is just different when you are praying to Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. It's just different. And so that'd be my last message, like spend time with Christ.
That's a really powerful message.
It's the most important one. Yeah.
And thank you, Father Dan,
Yeah.
for all that you do,
Yep.
for your message. And I mean, you know, we've seen a lot of people come back to church, and we appreciate the things that you do.
Thank you.
So let your light shine.
I will do my best.
Let your light shine among men, that people may see your good work and give glory to your Father.
Amen.
Thank you.
What advice would you give the parishioners during the transition?
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, right? So I was actually talking with our previous vicar for clergy, who was the one who called me when I was coming to Terre Haute 5 years ago. So Father Joe Feltz, because at the last, I know, and I'm still embarrassed by that. But Father Joe Feltz, he was at the convocation this week, and he told me a story that he hadn't shared with me before. But he said when I was being assigned here, he didn't tell me who, but he said there was a parishioner, and I don't know if it was from St. Margaret Mary's or St. Patrick's. I don't know where it was from. They wrote a letter to the Archdiocese, upset that Father Rick was leaving, right? They were upset that Father Rick was leaving, and B, that they were getting some, you know, snotty-nosed 28-year-old priest, you know, who wasn't used to doing any of this. They thought it was irresponsible of the Archdiocese to send someone so young to be in charge of 2 parishes and a school. So they sent this letter off, and of course the Archdiocese, you know, they took that in mind, but they were like, we've made our decision, you know, we're going to follow through with it. That same person, 9 months later, actually met Father Joe in person, and said to him, you probably don't remember me, but I sent you a letter 9 months ago. And they were like, I take it back. You know, Father Dan has been phenomenal, and we really enjoy him here. He's a perfect fit. And they told him at the time, they told Father Joe at the time, never move Father Dan, right? And I would emphasize to our parishioners, this is the normal course of priest transfers. So yes, that happened last time with Father Rick and myself, and it's happening again. There are going to be parishioners that are not happy that I'm being moved, and they've gotten used to me. But you're getting an awesome priest. And so like, give him a chance, right? Like you gave me a chance 5 years ago, and I am eternally grateful for that, you know, that I was a 28-year-old priest that had never been a pastor before, and you welcomed me, you took me into your homes, you prayed for me, and you allowed me to be a priest. And I would say, let Father Ben do the same thing. And don't compare the two of us. You know, we're very different, but we're also very much the same. He's going to do things differently than I do them. And I guarantee in 9 months, you're going to be like, you know, Father Dan who? You know, you're going to be like, Father Ben is doing an awesome job, and he's a perfect fit for these parishes. So that'd be my biggest advice with this transfer is just remember history. This happens every time a priest gets transferred, you know, that there's always this uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen, and I get that. But know that Father Ben has my greatest confidence, and I am very excited for these parishes and for him. So I think it's going to go well.
That's kind of hard for that part, no? That for priesthood to be moved from one place to the other. And
yeah, so when they called me for this transfer, and I kind of said that to them, I was like, you know, I'm not ready to leave. You know, like I thought I had more time, and the person who I was talking with, it wasn't the Archbishop at the time, it was the current vicar for clergy. He gave some good advice, and he said, you know, there's no good time to move.
True.
You know, whether it was this year or years down the road, there's no good time to move. And he said, this is the biggest heartache of being a priest. You know, because you put down roots, you develop relationships, but you are obedient to the bishop and to the bigger church, and so you kind of carry that as a priest. You know, this heartache.
Takes a lot of trust and obedience.
It does, a lot of trust in God, But it is a heartache. But at the same time, I think it makes us much more empathetic and understanding towards people who have to do this as well. You know, because it's human nature. You put down roots, and then things happen, and you have to move or you have to change things. And so for a priest to go through this, it's good for us and it's good for our parishioners because we can minister better because of it. So yeah.
So, but you'll be back, right?
Yes.
You'll come back often.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the biggest consolation is that because it's Father Ben, and we were just talking about this week as well. Like he's like, anytime you want to come, anytime you want to take the masses, anytime you want to help with something, like you're more than welcome to come back. And so I am going to take advantage, especially for the big stuff. You know, like, I mean, you know, the 100th anniversary, like a lot of the big things coming down the pike, the St. Pat's, you know, party in March, like all those sorts of things. Like I'm as much as my schedule allows, I'm hoping to come back for those things. Yeah. No, it's been a phenomenal 5 years, and I will never forget it.